So as a furry myself who is a cartoon connoisseur and a fan of the We Bare Bears franchise, I would like to know one thing. Why are you like this? So I watched this episode a long time ago. This episode was featured in May, almost 2 months ago. Now all of a sudden I'm scrolling through my feed on twitter.com, then BAM! I see a load of various art dedicated to this devilishly handsome wolf. Honestly, I should have known that this was bound to happen. So now that we're here, here's a bat's closer look at sheep bears.
The countryside, little fluffy clouds, little fluffy sheep. Will our bears find a home in this splendor?
So when talking about this world, it's not necessarily the most unique one at a first glance. However, I do believe the scenery is very pretty. Obviously, with the introduction of the large amount of sheep surrounding the bears, it basically threw to us that this would be some sort of farming episode, or medieval episode. They did a great job in designing the house in a way that can be very distinct. To me, it makes it feel like we're going into one of those old homes in Ireland. While it's not the most intriguing visuals we have seen from the bears so far, there's always some sort of twist to them.
Mr. Farmer, sir? Your farm is so nice, we sure love to call it home, sir.
Any of you bears herd sheep before?
I really dig the farmer's design here. Now, of course, each of the worlds the bears travel to, there's always some sort of fantastical present within each world, whether it be subtle at first or coming right at you at full speed. With this episode, they went with a more subtle route. With this episode being on a farm, the pacing of the exposition was going to be pretty slow. That could be a hit or miss depending on how many interests you have when it comes to this setting. For myself, it's not the best way to start an episode. There are definitely times where an episode does need to have a slow introduction in case there is a lot that needs to be explained about the world. However, considering that the task in order for them to stay is simply herding the sheep, there's definitely the feeling of it having a large amount of fluff in the beginning. Especially since the farmer himself does not have any amount of depth at all initially. So how do they do?
Attention, sheep! As your boss, I command you to go into your pen! Go! I command you, go now!
Yeah, clearly they don't have a clue in what they're doing. There are certainly some funny attempts each bears tries to do to get the sheep in the pen. Each of them were interesting in their own right and fits their personality. Grizz trying to use order to the sheep, Ice using flags to communicate with them, and Panda trying to bribe the sheep with chocolate, all failing miserably. I should point out that this is clearly an episode that speaks on ways to manage a group of people in doing a certain task for you. Essentially, what are the effective ways of being a leader? Considering the Cubs don't have a lot of experience when it comes to leadership, besides Grizz, I guess, since he is the oldest, the lack of understanding on how to lead effectively was very daunting. With their opportunity of living in this farm dimming, they have to go to good old Reliable.
How to show those sheep who's boss.
Sup, Wolfpack? Today I'll show you how to show a sheep who's boss.
Move it, grass munchers, or I'll make you into a sweater!
So the pace starts to pick up here, as the bears start to get into their ferocious side. The visuals of these bears ruffling up their fur and showing their sharp teeth to get into character works so well with raising an aggressively cute look. Witnessing the bears use their knowledge to herd the sheep works like a charm, but you can clearly see there's something wrong with this picture. Even though the bears are using a tactic that can work, witnessing the body language of the sheep is showing a completely different side to the story the Cubs aren't not perceiving. The sheep aren't being guided, they are being forced. You can tell by how the sheep shiver and become more wide-eyed when they are chased by the bears, showing some sort of fear. Heck, you can even hear that fear within these sheep as they baa into the pen. While it is the most questionable tactic, it did get the job done. So that means the bears found themselves a place to stay. The search is finally over.
Oh, hello. Heard some howling earlier. Well, what do we have here?
There he is, in all his husky glory. Meet the newest addition to the Sexy Wolves Club. I'm just gonna call you Chad. Yeah, we don't actually know his name. So now that we've been properly introduced, we can now talk about the appeal this character has and why a particular fandom is absolutely thirsting over him. Well, if you live under a rock, the furry fandom has a particular interest in anthropomorphic animals, and how much that level of interest is depending on an individual within the community. Many see themselves in this form as a way to truly express oneself, and that can lead you down a rabbit hole that will explore your, let's say, intimate interest. Look, this is still a review for a show that's Y7, so I'm trying my best to keep it as clean as possible, okay? Anyways, from his introduction, you know that his structure is very muscular and top heavy in the large frame he has. His fur is very simplistic, but very popular and common in your basic persona design. He's got a striped tank top and wears a black cap backwards, something you'll see most frat boys wear. Plus that very raspy, soothing voice. All those features are easy to make any fur go hands over heels for a character like this. Even I have to admit that there are some features I would consider attractive. Oh, don't give me that look. Anyways, the bear's wolf-like behavior captured some unwanted attention that they have to tackle to save the sheep they swore to protect. Well, that could have gone better. So in contrast to the farmhouse, I really dig the design of Chad's den the most. To me, it's like a much more menacing version of the classic home of the OG bears. I love the small details of the home with the claw marks all over the house. We see it in both the outdoor and indoor designs of the home. It matches so well with Chad's personality as a whole. Sure, his entire physique and posture is menacing, but he has some civilized characteristics that do make him stand out a bit more. He's a wolf that knows how to make a mean dish with his pantry full of vegetables and spices. He can flip the switch of using his feral behavior depending on the situation well, and he's big on having good hygiene. Even with the small amount of time we do get to see him, he's got a lot of potential to be a mainstay as a character. He gives off the same vibes as I would perceive to be a young Bowser. The interactions with our protagonists were very fun to witness as the bears attempted to get out of a sticky situation. He's got a whole lot of charm to him that makes it hard not to like him.
Sheep, get a move on! The scary wolf is coming back! Wait! They're not scared of the wolf. They're scared of us bears!
So now they have an understanding of why the sheep are so hesitant to listen to what they have to say. There's only so much you can do when using the likes of scare tactics. Many people would just stick to what is considered the safest place for them at that time. For the sheep's case, it's staying in the corner Chad placed them in. So trying a different approach is the next best thing for the trio to get the sheep to safety. But of course, they got to think quickly because Chad is getting ready to fill his empty stomach.
Huh?
What an epic way to end an episode. I think it was a great way to signal the best way to get someone to do what you need them to do, is simply using a kind and respectful approach. Clearly the bears didn't catch that during the heat of the moment when they essentially begged the sheep to get moving. so it made sense for the cubs to not understand why they decided to move in the first place. So Lil Sheep told the truth about how asking nicely is a much more preferred tactic compared to being mean.
Can I get a ba? See?
Throughout this entire episode, they never paid attention to the clear body language of the sheep, and that made them be viewed in a negative light. So now the baby bears have more of an understanding of that lesson, and it's a great way to show children the importance of a union in the most subtle way. Until the end of the episode.
I can have the sheep herd themselves. I'm a union man.
Farmer says workers' rights. This was a pretty alright episode in the grand scheme of things. I would say when it comes to the pacing of the episode, it does start off very slow for me. This was another basic forestry-like episode when it comes to the settings, and while it was certainly pretty to look at, it just doesn't garner a lot of interest. However, when it comes to the characters that were introduced, they are certainly interesting at first glance. Their designs are incredibly distinct, but their personalities are a bit more developed than what was originally perceived. The farmer, while seen as a calm, hard-working individual, can turn on a threatening aura when needed, while the wolf has a respectful demeanor that he can turn on when needed as well. I think that's what helps elevate the simplistic story overall in sharing the lessons of what it takes to be a good boss, not by barking orders and berating the worker, but by being able to listen to the needs to increase a steady relationship with your workforce in order to have a healthy working environment. Alright, and one last thing. Who's hotter, Chad or Wolfthorn? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to see this Bat's closer look. Huge shout out to all the artists that allowed me to use their art for this video. If you'd like to see more We Baby Bears content, click on the videos to the left. Hit the subscribe and bell icon to get the latest from me. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.